One of the first things you have to understand about pepper spray is there's different types of sprays. Some come out in a stream pattern, some come out in a cone pattern, and some come out in a fog pattern. In an environment like we have today where it's windy, the cones and the fogs tend to cross-contaminate. In other words, it's liable to spray on you as well as the assailant. I happen to be a fan of the streamers. They tend to go out a little farther. They're less prone to cross-contamination. They affect the eyes very, very well. Pepper spray affects the mucous membranes around the eyes, nose, and throat. When it gets into the lungs, it causes coughing and gagging. When it gets in the eyes, it tends to shut the eyes down. And really, that's what we're looking for. The eyes are a really valuable target for us. Now, if I can get them to close their eyes for a moment, it gives me an opportunity to escape. The other thing we need to look at in analyzing which pepper spray we're going to get is the size and the type of triggering mechanisms. You can see this type here has what we call a flip-top safety. The flip-top safety is the type used primarily in law enforcement. It's used for a reason. It's simple, it's easy to access, it's less confusing, especially under stress. To activate the flip-top safeties, generally you can grab it in a reflexive grip, point the weapon at the target, insert your thumb or finger underneath, and depress the triggering mechanisms. You're targeting specifically the face, and particularly the eyes and or the brow area of it. Don't conserve spray. Second and a half, 2 seconds, whatever you need to douse this person with as much product as you can to facilitate your escape. Another type of triggering mechanism is what's called a twist top safety, and this is probably the most common. It also happens to be a little less expensive than some of the others, so a lot of people gravitate to it. You'll also see these in very small types of containers, and a lot of people like them because it's small, it's easy to carry. The problem is sometimes they're so small your hand gets in the way, you lose them in your purse or your backpack. And then, to me, more importantly, is the triggering mechanism is more complex. It requires you to align a tab with a slot, then depress that. If you don't get it properly aligned and you depress it, nothing's happening, which you can imagine in a stressful situation is going to make the matter that much worse. That's why we typically don't use these in law enforcement. You'll oftentimes see these types of triggering mechanisms associated with keychains. And that's again problematic because if I got my keys in one hand, pepper spray in the other, I can't get to the door, have my pepper spray out. I have to line some type of safety mechanism or reduce it so I can access it. You can see a lot of potential problems. Yeah. The last type that you'll commonly see is similar to a deodorant or a breath spray type. It requires you to remove some type of a cap. It's got a little push down spray container. These typically, rather than using a stream, use some type of cone or fog type. Very little product in it, usually very little range. You know, sometimes as little as 3 or 4 feet, which means the assailant's going to get a lot closer to you before you can actually activate the units.
So if I get my pepper spray, how am I supposed to practice? Am I supposed to go outside and practice with it?
Yeah, you have to, a couple things. You want to make sure the wind's always to your back.
Okay.
So the first thing I recommend when you get a new container of pepper spray is take it out, examine it. Make sure you don't have any leaks around there.
Okay.
Because obviously you can see if you've got leakage around the edges of those, then you know that you may not have enough propellant in there.
Okay.
So take it out, examine it. Then take it out, make sure you got the wind to your back, being away from buildings,
Okay.
in that one, and then test spray it and see
Okay.
what the spray pattern is, how far it goes.
Okay.
About a half-second
Right.
spray is just fine for that.
Right.
Lastly, what I recommend is after you've done it, is take a little pot of water, okay? Submerge it in the water, make sure you don't have any air bubbles coming out. Because
Okay.
sometimes, you know, the triggering mechanisms can stick, and if they
Yeah.
do that, it's going to leak its propellant. And then lastly, once you've done that, if you'll float it, we call it the float test.
Okay.
Just sit it in water, let it drop down to a certain stage. You'll see where it's at. You can take a little stripy marker or some fingernail polish.
Oh, you can see
mark
where
it,
the- okay.
and you can see how much. And when you do that again, 6 months from now or 4
You know
months
how
from
much is
now,
it?
you test it every time.
How much is there? I mean, I think most people think it's a one-shot thing, but it's not. You've got.
No, it
You can
depends.
keep
The
using
type
it,
that
right?
you were just demonstrating with, the practicing, they
Yeah.
have about a 1.5 or 3/4 of an ounce to 1.5, depending on the size.
Okay.
That one. It's about 7 seconds worth of spray.
Okay.
In that one. So I typically say if you have to use it for real
Right.
against a bad guy or a bad girl, then get a new one.
Right.
Because you don't know, you won't remember how
Right,
much
right.
you
You don't
sprayed.
want 'em.
And after a year or so of practicing, if you're practicing every couple, 2 or 3 months or 4
Right.
months, then you're going to be out of it and probably in a year anyway. So it's better to use it more often and become familiar. You got to practice.
Right.
If you don't practice,
There's no
it's a
point.
perishable skill.
Okay.
It's going to go away. The other option, and some of the manufacturers do this, is you can buy inerts on that.
Okay.
And the actual inerts will come in the same size and strategies.
Okay.
We typically use a large inert bottle because it's cheaper and I can practice a lot. So you can find something like this, which is law enforcement size.
Right.
Same triggering mechanism. You
Okay.
can buy it. It's alcohol and water.
Okay.
And now when you're practicing, you can actually practice
Right.
pulling the trigger
And you can feel
spray.
how-
You can
right.
feel what it
Okay.
feels like and get out there and spray. And lastly, if you really want to have fun, get your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, and then practice spraying on a moving target.
Right.
It's just water and alcohol. They can put glasses on if they would like.
Right.
Have them run at you, and then practice spraying and moving,
And
spraying
moving.
and
And that's
moving.
what I was going to say. Once you spray it, you want to get out.
Moving's critical because even though it might affect them, they got a lot of inertia coming forward.
they're coming at
and
you.
they're advancing on
Okay.
you. So spray, even if it's not 100% effective, people will shield their eyes temporarily. And if they're shielding their eyes, that gives us time
Right.
to get out of Dodge.
So have the spray, practice
Have it.
with it, and then have it available.
You got it. You got to have it
Okay.
available. Practice, practice, practice.
Okay.
And be thinking what if, always, or if then.
Okay, right.
When this happens, this is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I told you I think pepper spray is a great tool, but it has to be readily available when you need it. If it's not in your hand or somewhere on your body where you can access it relatively quickly, it's not the right tool for the right job. In those cases, you're going to have to use your hands, feet, whatever is necessary to create space in order to draw and access it. The type that I mentioned earlier with the flip top safety, this particular brand has a clip as well on it. And I like it because I can have it clipped to my pocket or clipped to my belt. It's readily accessible. A female or lady can clip it to their purse. You can have it clipped to a backpack. You get to it relatively quickly. And as well, it even has a little finger groove in it. So you pretty much know as you draw that where it's going to be properly aligned. With that, wherever you carry it, you need to practice drawing it. Obviously, you have to have a place of safety to do that, wind to your back. You don't have to actually press the trigger every time, but you should practice drawing the tool, inserting your thumb or finger into the triggering mechanisms, reholstering it, doing that on a regular basis. It'll become reflexive under stress and you'll immediately act to it. Lastly, if you don't have time to access your pepper spray, we're going to have to go to our physical self-defense skills,
Right.
which is why we emphasize learning those.
Right.
So you can imagine if I'm on you all of a sudden real quick and you
Right.
can't access
Right,
that,
I can't get
you're
to
going to
it.
have to put weapons to targets. So you got it. Go for the marbles, right? Closest weapon, closest target, create some space, draw your pepper spray,
Gotcha.
spray and run.
Okay.
You can use pepper spray legally in self-defense.
Okay.
And it's not, some states require a permit and some don't. California doesn't require a specialized permit to
Okay.
carry it. 18 or older, no felony convictions. 16 or older with parental permission on that one.
Okay.
A lot of people have asked me about pepper spray as a self-defense option, and I'm here to tell you it is a very viable option for you. But just like any other tool, you've got to use the right tool for the right job. One of the advantages of pepper spray is it allows you to reach out and touch somebody at a relatively safe distance, 8, 10, 12 feet, depending on the type of spray. You really have to know how to use it, when to use it, what to do after you've used it.